Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Whiskey Congress is back in session. Stephen and I are together in the Cleveland studio. It's been a wild week for me and you, I think, but how you doing, brother?
Good. We'll just say I saw your future while I was in Columbus.
Fuck you. All right, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, inside joke. It's
inside
fine.
joke. Yes.
But no, things are good.
Steve predicts I'll be smoking weed in the broad daylight on the Ohio State campus in 20 years.
Yeah, things are good. You know, the new venture is progressing. It's just got me running literally all over the state of Ohio, Cleveland, Columbus, Youngstown. You know, soon to be Cincinnati and other places. So things are good. You know, it was an interesting week as much as I could follow. Starting with the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, and her like funeral procession. Look. I don't have a feeling about the Queen really one way or another. As it relates to her death, I think that, you know, the royal family to me represents a lot of issues in the world between their imperialism and their, you know, the harm that they caused. And, you know, it's interesting, especially on Twitter, to see a lot of the Brits' reaction. I think that, there's a lot of negativity being thrown towards Meghan Markle because she's there. The British, they say, oh, it's not racism. She just didn't respect the Queen and blah, blah, blah. And she didn't respect the royal family and all our traditions and all that other shit. And some of the things that they're calling her out on, it's just like, all right, she's not saying anything or doing anything out of that a normal person would or wouldn't do. She's not even doing anything that other members of the royal family really are or would or wouldn't do. But it's interesting how they focus.
She's doing it while being black.
Yeah, basically, right? Like, and they're hyper focused on her, and they've got a million reasons why they don't like her and everything else. When I mean, personally, it's just like because she's black, right? And even you got the Queen before she died wondering what the baby was going to look like. You know, you got the Queen who said that black people couldn't work in certain places in the castle or wherever the fuck she lives. Like, I don't really have much of. I have no respect or anything for the royal family. I respect Harry and William for their military service, for going out and living my dream of being fighter pilots. But other than that, they're the royal family and all that other stuff. Fuck that. You know what I mean? Like,
could not.
You motherfucker. Like, did they start slavery? No. Did they accelerate slavery? Yes. Did they? Are they why we had the transatlantic slave trade? Yes. And they'll be like, oh, well, we were the first ones to outlaw it and abolish it. Like, okay, so you ran it for 400 years and you stopped it early, but you benefited a whole fuck ton a lot from it. And, to try to wave the flag like, well, we abolished it, before you guys did, then, like, okay, congratulations, But, I mean, in the UK, they have their own issues with race and racism and elitism and all that other stuff. And so I really don't want to hear it from people in the UK about the issues here in the US when, you guys do a good job of being really polite and talking about these issues, but in reality, like, you have a lot of the same issues that we do, save for the gun violence, obviously, but I mean, like, you people are literally trying to get knives outlawed. So, I just really don't want to hear it from them. I mean, rest in peace to, the woman who passed away, but I don't acknowledge kings and queens. I don't kneel and kiss the ring. I don't do any of that shit. I'm a fucking American. I'm free to fucking criticize your ruler or whatever you want to fucking call her, and I don't give a shit about her royal status, but rest in peace as a person.
You've given this more attention that I find.
I don't want. I mean, well, because I kind of got called out on Twitter because someone said something relatively ignorant, a British person that we don't follow on Twitter at all. They just somehow ended up in our feed because maybe someone that we do follow retweeted it. And then I made the comment or whatever.
Okay,
and then the person blocked me, and I was like, okay, well, whatever. I don't fucking follow you anyway. It's not a big deal. No skin off my back. But I just think there's a lot of British people that are showing their true colors with this whole thing, and whatever, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, I mean, the idea that someone is born into a royal family just annoys me to my core. Whether it's the Saudis, the Brits, I don't care if it's just purely ceremonial.
And I mean, like, you don't even fucking run the country. Like, it's a figurehead sort of situation. Like, if you're the king, right? Like, you've got like the king of Saudi Arabia, but I mean, like, now while he's his own person and a whole other bag of issues and concerns, like, at least he's running the country, right? And not trying to do it like on the sly, like, I'm a figurehead, but like, hey, whisper, whisper, this is what I think about this and that. So anyway, moving on to our own issues here in the U.S.
We've got a wannabe king.
You got Ron DeSantis and this whole thing with him shipping the immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. And I mean, everyone's called it a political stunt. Now look, are there issues at the border? Absolutely. I think, are Biden and his administration doing enough about it? Listen, no, they're not, right? But no one really has. Like, Trump made a big mess of the whole thing, but, really wasn't focusing on real solutions. Oh, build a wall. Like, listen, we've talked about this numerous times. Anyone who's actually dug into the real issues on the border will tell you, we need more people working on the border. We need more technology on the border. We need more of the other sort of soft services that go along with immigration in terms of judges and attorneys and social workers and, people to process these asylum claims and all that other stuff. We also have the issues in the countries where these people are coming from that make these countries so terrible that they're willing to walk, thousands of miles to fucking get there. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues to address with immigration.
I think these people are mostly from Venezuela.
Yeah.
Venezuela has been a catastrophe for 20 years, maybe probably more.
Yeah, I mean, now it's more recent. I think Venezuela's really been more of an issue for the last 10 to 15 years, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that their government decided that they wanted to be the top dog when it came to
oil,
drugs.
Oh well, that too, yeah.
No, not that too. That. Right. If you want to run the country based off your oil exports, okay, fine, that makes sense, sure. Right? But they wanted to be the number one drug dealer in the fucking country and take over the cartels and make cocaine their main export, right? Like, so that's the issue with Venezuela. It's not socialism. It's not their liberal left policies. It's the fact that the government, is a fucking drug cartel, right? Like, I mean, that's the fucking problem. It has nothing to do with social. It doesn't matter what type of government you have if your government decides that they want to be the number one drug dealer in the world. And so that's why you have your issues in Venezuela. And so you have those people. Now, those people were processed, seeking asylum. And I'm not sure, and a lot of people are not sure on the details of how DeSantis even gets involved with this, right? Florida and Texas, while they may align politically, geographically they don't. So, DeSantis decides to stick his hand in this, right? Stir the pot, get the people from Texas to Florida, fly them to Martha's Vineyard to make this statement, to make this point, and he got what he wanted, right? For him and,
sure.
and everybody.
It's an on the libs move.
Well, right, on the libs move, but to them, there's no such thing as bad publicity, because anytime you criticize them, right, they're just like, oh, the media is the liberal media is attacking us, and they don't want to look at the real issue, right, and so you look at that for what it is. It's a really piece of shit move because they lied to the people. They get them there, and listen, to Martha's Vineyard's credit, those people, once they found out that they were there, they, jumped into action and helped them with, shelter and trying to figure out jobs and trying to figure out what the next move is. And so, and people are just like, oh, well, Martha's Vineyard isn't what people think that it is. They think it's filled with all these wealthy people that are here, that go there to vacation and everything. And there are plenty of wealthy people that go to Martha's Vineyard because it is a relatively, pretty place.
Yeah, stuff.
But there are a lot of older people who are not wealthy, right? There are a lot of people who have lived there for their entire lives that aren't wealthy, and it's actually most of the people there are lower middle class, and they're older, by all standards and accounts. And so, but they did jump into action. They did help these people. And now, but that's not the solution, right? Like taking immigrants and then spreading them all across the country, for political gain isn't the solution. And, not doing anything about the border isn't the solution. Building a wall isn't a solution. It's a very complex problem that people in D.C. and Texas and these border states need to come together to start to really think about how to solve for it, right? It's a humanitarian effort in these countries where these people are coming from. It's, figuring out what to do at the border to prevent the human trafficking and the drug trafficking. It's figuring out what to do with the people, because no matter what you do for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, you're still going to have people trying to escape really bad conditions. So how do you deal with that? And I don't necessarily have the answers, but the people who have the ability to impact these situations need to start sitting at the table and having real conversations to come up with solutions on how to fix it.
But that's not what they want.
No,
right?
I mean,
it's a culture war.
And listen, I put there's blame to go on Democrats, right? I'm like what DeSantis and Abbott and those people they're doing is disgusting, and they're not helping to solve for the problem, right? But the Democrats aren't doing much, and if you're a governor or mayor in the city where this doesn't impact you, you're in Chicago, you're in Boston, you're in New York, and you're not seeing the same type of immigration, right? Then either stay out of it or start offering fucking solutions, right? Like there is something to be said for what because they're not. It's DeSantis took it to a whole new level, right? Like they were just like a lot of these people, whether it's Lightfoot in Chicago or some of your previous mayors and some of your in New York or whatever, throwing their 2 cents in. It's just like whoa, hold on, back up, right? But we do need overall we need to start to address this, and I think there's a lot that needs to go into it that's not happening right now because of the culture war, because people are trying to one-up each other in the media as opposed to actually solving the problem.
Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, I don't see that train changing tracks. We're so far down the hole to make sure the other guy looks worse than you. I mean, we're seeing that in Ohio with J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan. The commercials and the attacks or whatever, it's no longer about here's what I can do for you, here's what my platform is. It's here's how bad this other guy is. Now, right. In the case of J.D. Vance, he is that bad. So
right. I mean, it's not hard. I mean, he's teeing it like he has for the last couple of years. He's been teeing it up, for any opponent to be able to do exactly this. And so we'll see how that works. But I mean, it's a sad situation for those people. But you hope that things work out for the people that were shipped to Martha's Vineyard. But look, this isn't the first time, right? Like, I mean, Abbott has been sending busloads of people to different places, whether it's Chicago or New York or whatever. And some people will say, like, you got to do something to get the attention. And listen, to that extent, something does need to be done. We need more action. We need Biden and his administration to be able to walk and chew gum. Yeah, there's a lot of shit going on. And yes, inflation. And yes, the war in Ukraine. And yes, chips and microchips and all the other shit. But, you got a lot of people at your disposal, right? And you have to be able to show that that people are working on this. Like I know Kamala Harris was assigned by Joe Biden to really work on this, and I don't know what the hell she's doing. I don't, right? I mean, she's not been in the media much, and I think part of that is because I don't think she plays all that well in the media, right? Like I think there are a lot of your black thought leaders, right, are going to prop her up because she's black and Indian or whatever. But at the same time, like, where is she? What is she doing, right? And you're just calling her. I'm calling her out because she's got a fucking job to do, and I don't know if she's fucking doing it, right? Like, if she is, then by all means,
she's not selling it,
right? She's not doing a good job of selling it, right? And so if she is, just tell me what you're doing, and if you're not doing it, then get the fuck on it because you got a couple years here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think she's been kind of she came off as such a firebrand during the debates, and she's been essentially non-existent.
She had one moment, highlight moment in the debates, and
which was attacking Joe Biden,
oddly enough, and then she kind of crashed and burned after that. And now she's the vice president, and it's just like, all right, what are we doing, right? Like, Joe, we did it. Okay, now what are you doing? And I think it's fair to call her out on that. And again, if she's got a laundry list of things that she's done that are accomplishments worth noting, then someone please point them out to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I'm not going to push back and say, here's her list of accomplishments. I don't know either. And she has been virtually invisible. And when she has shown up, she hasn't looked great.
Right. I mean, she hasn't, which is disappointing. I mean, I thought she had the chops for it. And I mean, I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong, but I was wrong. Like I don't like Joe Biden's probably going to end up running again against Trump. Unfortunately, if he doesn't, I don't think she should be the nominee, and that's definitely not automatic.
I don't think either of them should run again. We've had it,
but I mean, we'll see what happens.
Right. So let's talk about right-wing media red meat in the Chicago Purge law, which is a mislabeled.
Well, it's the safety. First of all, it's the Safety Act, right? And people are calling it the Purge law, and it's essentially the main component is that they're eliminating the cash bail system, and especially for lower income people, because it isn't fair, it's not right, and it's unconstitutional what happens, right? And I can speak directly to this because I've worked directly in the criminal justice system, and I've seen it. In Chicago. I've seen people, right, who go in, who get picked up on charges. They don't have the money for an attorney. The public defenders, and I can speak to this as well, these public defenders have caseloads of hundreds of cases. Right, like you go in as a first-year public defender, you are going to have 100 different dockets, right? Or 100 different cases on your docket, right? Within the first couple of years of working there, and it's only going to grow from there. Some crimes are serious, some are less serious, but you got people who've been sitting in jail waiting for their day in court for years, right? Multiple years, right? And you've got a right to a speedy trial in the Constitution. It's right there. Waiting in a county jail for your trial, for your case to be adjudicated for years is not a speedy trial by any stretch of the fucking imagination. And so, whether it's Chicago or New York over at Rikers Island, like, you're violating people's constitutional rights by keeping them in jail because they can't afford to pay bail, right? And so this is something that absolutely needs to be addressed because it disproportionately impacts, lower income people, and a majority of them are Black and Hispanic, right? Period, point blank, the end. That's just the reality of the situation. There's concerns because people are like, oh, you're going to let all these, criminals out on the street and they need to be locked up, and there's just going to be a wave of crime because you have all these criminals out on the street who are going to terrorize everyone now because they're not being locked up and held in jail, because they, like before they could be held because they couldn't afford bail. Now there's nothing to stop them from running the streets and everything else. And I think that, is there some truth to that? I think there's going to be a decent percentage of people who, aren't going to be in jail. They're going to get out because, because you eliminate bail, and they're probably going to end up offending again. Like, it's just what it is. You can't ignore that. But there's also some other aspects of this law that need to be taken into consideration before you go down the path of, all hell is breaking loose and there's no law. Like, listen, there will be prosecutorial discretion in the way of the judge, right? Making these decisions on whether a person should be kept or not, right? And they'll look at rap sheets. They'll look at what the crime is. They'll look at, is this person, are they a candidate to flee, right? Is there a real probability that this person is just going to skip town and leave, which actually doesn't happen as much as you think that it would, right? Which, for a lot of these people, they're fucking stupid, right? Like, it's just like, all right, I'm going to run from the law, but I'm going to just go down the street to my aunt's house, right? Like, motherfucker, you better get your ass to Canada or Mexico, and you got a better chance of going to Mexico than you do to Canada. But, like, that's one aspect. But then the judge is also going to look at, again, like, what did you do? What have you done in the past? And, are you truly a danger to society? Now, look, a lot of times these judges make really bad decisions, right? Like, sometimes these judges are trying to clear their own docket, and sometimes some will. And what you're going to have, I promise you, is you're going to have some judges that are going to look at this and everybody's going to stay in jail, right? Like, everybody that they come across, like, they're like, yep, you're a risk, you're a risk, you're a risk, you go to jail. Some judges are going to be way too lenient, right? Like, they're going to hear a little bit of a sob story, or they're going to, the attorney's going to come up and say, oh, he's got kids, he's got this, he needs to be able to work, all that other stuff, and they're going to let everybody go, and there's going to have to be some balance that they're going to have to find. And the reality is, you are going to have people that are going to get arrested, that are going to be let out, and that are going to reoffend. And a lot of people are going to look at that and say, see, had you not, but then there will be, 100 other people for that one person who were just fine and were able to get things sorted out. And a lot of times what happens is you throw a person in jail, you don't let them out. So what can't they do? They can't go back to work. They can't take care of their obligations. So then they get all these other additional charges, right? Like a lot of times it's whether it's child support.
Okay.
A lot of times, like some of the conditions of previous releases are you got to work, you got all this other stuff. So they end up being, double and triple impacted by getting additional charges. Like where if they had bail and they could get out, they could take care of these things, and then they wouldn't get the additional charges, and then they wouldn't be in jail longer, right? No matter how their case gets adjudicated. So now you can solve for some of that, but there is a risk. There is a risk of a criminal offending again once they're out. But I think you've done so much damage by keeping people in jail unnecessarily for so long that the pendulum has to swing the other way, right? And it's on these judges to really make good decisions in terms of who they let out versus who they don't, and being fair. And look, if you get a person that you let out on bail but they reoffend, then now you got to throw their ass in and you got to keep them in, right? Some of this is on the people, right? Like if you do something stupid and you get caught, right, and you're let out and you're waiting on going to trial or whatever, then it's probably not a good idea to start selling drugs again. It's probably not a good idea to steal something again, to rob something, or to rob someone, or to beat your girlfriend or whatever, right? Like it's on, there has to be some individual responsibility here. And then like if you got a person who gets let out, they reoffend and they go back in, I do not want to hear shit from the progressive liberal that's just like, oh, the system is racist. No, your client's an idiot, right? That person is an idiot. And I don't know what the fuck you want me to do, but I'm not going to continue to let that behavior persist. If we say you don't have to pay cash, you just have to show up to court, and instead they decide to not show up to court and do something stupid.
Yeah, all that's going through my head right now is Khalif Browder.
Yeah.
So Khalif Browder, if you don't know the story, I think he was 17 when he gets arrested.
He was younger than that when he got arrested.
Okay.
And I think
did he die at 17?
I think he died at 17.
Okay. Anyway, if you don't know the story, New York City, arrested for allegedly stealing a backpack, says he didn't do it because he didn't have bail money. He gets put in Rikers Island, spends, I think, 2 years in Rikers Island without ever getting a day in court. Because and they said to him, just plead guilty and you can go on your way. It's like, no, I didn't do this. And ultimately deals with the hell that is Rikers Island and commits suicide shortly after.
In a terrible way. Like he literally hung himself outside of his apartment window using an air conditioner.
The cord from an air conditioner. Yes, I mean, exactly. And so that's what I'm thinking of when I hear this. Like, okay, you're right. There are people who are going to get out, and there are people who are just dumbasses and dirtbags who are like, got arrested for
got a free pass
and took advantage of it, and that sucks. And you count on the judicial system to prevent that. You hope that they can do that. Having said that, I'll deal with. It's so easy for me to sit here and say, well, I don't care if someone reoffends because I'm not the victim of that reoffense. Right. If a murderer,
because that's a legitimate concern. But at the same, and the issue with Khalif Browder is, in reality, he probably should have never been arrested in the first place.
Exactly.
Right? You're dealing with a kid, right? Like who he says he didn't do it, and and I forget the exact details of it, but it was over a book bag, right? Essentially, whether he stole something, put it in his book bag, or they thought he stole the book bag or whatever it was. But stole the book bag. Either way, chances are he probably shouldn't have been arrested, right? And then you got to find some other way to deal with that as opposed to throwing a teenager into fucking Rikers Island.
Right.
So that
for years.
For years, right? So you have a whole other issue with Khalif Browder, but then why he can't get out is this whole idea of cash bail. He's from an underserved, underprivileged family. He goes in, he can't get himself out, so he spends all this time there completely. And Rikers Island is a place that has destroyed many grown ass men.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's not going to be any better for kids. And that kid paid the ultimate price with his mental health, his overall physical health. And when he got out, he just couldn't readjust and unfortunately took his own life. And you're right. That is an example of why this system needs to be fixed. And for all those people saying, all these bad things that are going to happen, look, I can give you a laundry list of all the terrible things that happen because of cash bail. Right, people that were beaten, people that were killed, people that killed themselves, waiting for years in jail for their day in court. They weren't guilty. We don't know that they weren't, like, they never had a chance to actually defend themselves. We don't know what happened, but what we do know is that with the amount of time that they spent in jail because of their inability to pay the cash bail system, they had this irreparable harm done to them. Yes, right? Whether it was a beating or whether they killed themselves, whether they were killed, whether they were raped, all these sort of things that happen.
Just held away from their
right? Just
put
existing
them in a box for a month and take their life away from them for a month and expect them to bounce back.
Right.
And much, much, much worse has happened. I mean, you take someone away from them. Okay, you've lost your job. You've lost,
right. You've lost your job, family, your kids, girlfriend, kid, all that sort of stuff that you lose, and then it's just like, all right, now how do I put the pieces back together? And you have the people, like, I know this is weird, but there are innocent people who are wrongly accused, right? It happens on a semi-regular basis. Or they're not guilty of that particular thing that they're accused of. Maybe they're guilty of something in that case, but the charges don't need to be as extensive as they are or whatever, but they never get a chance to really deal with it, or they end up pleading to something that they don't need to plead to because they at some point you get broken by sitting in jail when you shouldn't be there.
Yeah. And so whether this law is perfectly written or whatever, clearly maybe not. But
and then there's a couple other aspects of it too that I just want to throw out there, because this isn't just this idea of just letting people run free. There's also training and decertification. So the training is dealing with the police, right? Like there's additional training that the police need to go through. In the state of Illinois, this is an Illinois law. It's not just Chicago, but obviously Chicago being the most well-known city in the state and the one with the most issues in terms of crime. Police officers need to go through additional training, and there's also a decertification process of the police officers if they're found to have violated certain rules and or laws that I think is also beneficial and not being talked about enough. But those are also critical parts of the Safety Act in Illinois that's being called the Purge law by a lot of your conservative right-wing talking points.
They're letting those liberals want to let murders go. They want to defund the police. I'm like, all right, fine.
It's
red meat.
Now, it is, but I mean, there's something to it where, and especially like in a place like Chicago, let's not play any games that Chicago has all these people that are just committing these, they're not just committing it's not parking tickets and jaywalking, right? I've been there, I've seen it, and literally had to deal with it firsthand. So you do have some pretty hardened criminals there, drugs, gangs, violence. It is very real in Chicago. Let's not act it's not.
Right.
And so there is a level of concern in that city, especially in certain pockets of that city, of why this could definitely be a problem. And so, that shouldn't be ignored or swept under the rug. But again, it's more than just this law, and Chicago has a lot of shit that they need to look at to figure out how to solve for those things. But let's not dump all of that into this one particular thing and say this thing is going to be the fall of mankind.
Right. No, I agree with you. No one would argue Chicago has a lot of issues going on, and the street violence in Chicago is, the poster child for gang violence for a reason, because it's got a lot of problems. So there's neighborhoods in Chicago that are cops won't even go into.
Yeah, so, I mean, they're war zones. They're absolutely war zones, especially at night when the sun goes down, especially in the summertime. I've been in those neighborhoods. I've been around. I've had to duck the gunfire. I've been around some shady characters. Like it's a real thing. But we can't look at there's a lot of solutions. And there's a lot of solutions out there for the different problems. And so when some of those solutions come, we need to look at them holistically and not just take them for, again, what can we use for political gain?
Right. And that's why I want to talk about this so much. Is when I first heard about this, I'm like, okay, what's the rest of the story? And the rest of the story is cash bail creates a different set of problems. And one of the biggest problems we have as a world is saying, well, the problem is this. Right. Well, there's there's a butterfly effect. I mean,
right.
This happens, well, that impacts this and this and this. There's no simple answer, but getting rid of holding people in prison or holding people in jail without due process for extended periods of time is an important thing because it disrupts lives without even giving people due process.
And look, I mean, we have entirely too many people sitting in prison cells in the United States, right? I mean, like we lead the world. We lead the world in it. You know, and what's crazy is a lot of these conservatives feel like there should be more people in jail, right? Like they want more people in jail. They want more prisons. They want more police. And it's just like, look, that's not going well for you, right? Like it may make you happy to see all the little black faces in jail cells and prisons, but it's literally destroying you from the inside out. Because yes, it's in the urban center, it's in these black neighborhoods, and you're just like, I don't live there, so it doesn't affect me. But it's corrupting. Like the issues there are seeping out into the rest of society and manifesting itself in different ways that you don't necessarily think impact you now. But look, all it takes is one of these cops from Chicago or Cleveland or, you know, inner city New York or whatever to then go out into the suburbs and say, all right, I've had enough of dealing with Chicago. I've had enough of dealing with Cleveland. I'm going to go into the suburbs, but I'm going to treat the people in the suburbs like I treated the people in Cleveland. Because if they did that and they did it to you, you would not like it. Right. And we've seen it happen here in Cleveland, in Ohio, and some of these suburban cops who they leave, they transfer out of Cleveland, they go to Solon, they go to Strongsville or whatever. They take shit way too far in those particular neighborhoods, and people are like, "What the fuck, man? What are you doing? Why, like, you can't do that here, right?" Well, if he can't do it here, he probably shouldn't be doing it there, and therein lies the problem.
And a lot of times we're talking about nonviolent drug offenses, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. I have a THC pen in this house. Okay, fine, I have 2. Stop looking at me like that. Fine, 3, but only 3. And
you are telling on yourself. I'm not doing anything.
I know, I'm just having fun. But
I'm just trying to figure out where you're going.
Yeah, but the point is, I would step outside and hit my weed pen and not think a thing of it. If you did the same thing in East Cleveland, you'd be taking a much bigger risk.
And look, even with the nonviolent drug offenses, I think a lot of the cops that I talk to, like, they don't necessarily care about that. Where these guys get really sort of get in trouble, and a lot of people get themselves in trouble, is you got people out there maybe driving illegally, right, or driving on suspended licenses or whatever, and then so the police pulls them over, they run the plates. And, you know, the issues come, and then, yes, they have drugs in the car, or maybe they have a gun in the car, or whatever, which the whole gun in the car gets more complicated now because of the laws in Ohio. But all of a sudden, things compound really quickly, right? And then you've got, you know, these interactions that should be that are commonplace, that happen on a daily basis without issue in a lot of other places. But because a lot of our cops are not worried about de-escalation, they're not worried about keeping things calm, they feed into these really tense situations, and then they go bad, right? And that's where...
And then they need to pile on the charges, and then
they start piling it on, and so it's again, there's not any one easy way to fix it, because from the cops' perspective, and this is also real, there are a lot of dangerous people out there who drive illegally without insurance and maybe in stolen cars with guns and drugs and are willing to be violent and are not willing to go back to jail, and the police have to deal with them. Sure. And that's very real. And so you have to take that into account when you're criticizing police, because you have enough people react badly to just seeing you, and after a while you begin to anticipate that behavior, right? So how do you counteract just human nature to a degree, right? So again, it's a complex problem. When we used to talk to Mike Wood about these things, he would bring out some of the things that they had to deal with, but he was also pretty level-headed about the realities of how often some of this stuff actually did happen, right? So again, going back to what we were talking to with immigration, there are a lot of different components to this that require a lot of deep thinking. There's a lot of nuance to it, and if you're trying to come at it with this one thing is going to fix it all, whether you're from the conservative camp or the progressive camp, you're not gonna fix it, right? Like
there's no magic bullet, and we talked about this when you're a police officer getting lied to constantly, getting just treated.
There's a public defender. My own clients lied to me, even when they were innocent. It's like, bitch, why are you lying to me? I am here. I am literally your only friend in this motherfucker. Why are you lying to me? Right? You have the number of people who I would have their information, and these motherfuckers would give me wrong names, wrong addresses. I'm like, I know where you live. Why are you lying to me? Anyway.
That sounds like it was held back for years. All right, we got to change gears because you have to go watch the Steelers play, and I respect that. The Bills play Monday night.
Oh, the Bills play Monday night. Okay,
Monday
that's
night,
why.
That's why I'm so relaxed.
Right, what the fuck is going on here? I for some reason I thought they played. Okay, fine. Yes. Oh yeah, that's why I couldn't pick anybody from the Bills.
And FanDuel, yep.
Okay.
All right, so Mike Lindell got his phone seized by federal agents at a fucking Hardees. And
can we talk about one thing though?
Sure. I'm not even going to do a Mike Lindell impersonation.
Okay, so I love the Frisco Burger at Hardees. I love it. It's awful for you. It literally, I feel like eating more than one in a lifetime should probably kill you, but it's amazing. Now, I haven't had one in years, literally years, and I know there's 2 Hardees I know of. Neither of them are close by, which is good.
Isn't there a new one right?
Oh, I didn't know that. So
okay, you're gonna drive past. You're gonna drive past and going home. So.
But no, that's Arby's.
Arby's. That's
Arby's.
Hardees. I'm sorry.
Hardees and Arby's are two completely different animals.
Okay. Yes, they are.
But there are Hardees that are not close to me, which is good. But I do love me a good Frisco burger from Hardees. I don't even know if they still make it actually. So whatever. But Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy. And I don't know how this went down. They didn't arrest him, but they seized his phone, seized his laptop. But then he puts this thing out on Twitter, this video where he's saying he doesn't have any mode, he has no way to communicate with anybody and all this stuff. But he's he's literally putting a video out live on Twitter, clearly on a cell phone or a computer or a tablet or whatever, right? And then also he's like, I don't know, all my information is lost forever. I'm like, none of it is in the cloud? You don't have any of that where you can access it alternatively, and you also own, even though you're absolutely insane, your company is worth millions, you can go buy all that stuff new, and you should be able to recover some of it, right, Mike? Mike?
He is such a caricature.
Right.
If you were to make a movie about crazy politics and make him a character in it, he would be the guy who would say, okay, that's too far. That's too far. You're just, yeah.
Now, let me tell you what Mike Lindell has done for me. As a person who is starting their own company and, pushing through it, have seen obstacles and everything else, what I've learned is that, look, if Mike fucking Lindell, former meth addict and current crazy person, can have a multi-million-dollar company, then, I think I got a shot. Right?
No excuses.
Right? I'm a former drunk, right? But I think I give that ranks a little bit higher than being a former meth head. And I've got my quirks and things that I'm a little bit off with regarding. You can speak to many of them, Jim.
I could. I'm not that kind of guy.
But
I'm not
yes, the fuck you are. But I'm just saying that I just feel like if Mike Lindell can do it, then I've got a shot.
Well, I'm glad he inspires you by being a psychopath and still succeeding, allegedly. Who knows? The guy could be still a meth head and broke, but we don't know. Honestly, I'd feel better if I found out he was still on drugs because he's such a fucking lunatic. He's such a lunatic.
Right? And then you could be like, okay, it was the meth that did it.
Yes.
Right? I'm kind of hoping for
that.
that.
The alcohol. Blame it on
right? I just hope one day he breaks down or gets arrested or whatever, and it's just like, oh, he's got enough meth in his system to kill a horse. All right, well, then that explains it.
But the idea that it happened at a Hardees. Now, unfortunately, I had Arby's in my head.
Yes.
So I was picturing the roast beef sandwich.
Don't. We have the beef. Now listen, if that's me, I would be like, look, I'll give you whatever the fuck you want, but if I've made this decision to go to Hardees, I'm getting my fucking Frisco burger. Right?
So the issue is Frisco burger versus... all right. The concept is just so hilarious to me.
Right, so you guys waited to pull up on this dude at a Hardees. You don't want to do it at his house. You didn't want to do it at his office. You didn't want to do it anywhere else. You didn't want to do it when he was running around with Trump at Mar-a-Lago.
We're going to make that Frisco burger get cold on you, bitch.
Of all the places you waited to pull up on this dude, like, who made the decision to get him then?
All right.
Like, who was just like, his fat ass doesn't need another burger. Go get him now.
Did he ask for no ice with his Diet Coke?
But they didn't arrest him, right? They didn't arrest him. So I feel like he probably still should have been able, although, like, it depends on how hungry I was. Right, like if they got me before I ate and I was hungry, that thing with me would have went bad.
It could have escalated.
It would have went real bad. If they got me after, I would have gave them whatever I want. I mean, they like.
I had my Frisco burger.
You get me after I eat or have sex. You can have whatever you want.
Hopefully, not both of those things would happen at Hardees with you. I'm not saying it hasn't. You're looking at me like
Hardees.
Hardees?
No.
Not a Hardees. Okay,
not
good.
a Hardees.
You can't say rallies though.
I can't. Well, I've never actually been inside at rallies.
I haven't either.
I can't say I've been inside a Taco Bell.
All right, moving on. So there's actually two things I want to hit on before you go watch your boys play. Russia and Ukraine is not something that's on our board, but that is changing dramatically. And
so we talked about it a little bit last week. So there was a big, and it was kind of happening. It had just happened like the night before, and you and I recorded. We talked about it briefly. But there was a huge shift. So the Ukrainians went on an offensive and took back, thousands of kilometers of land that had been claimed by the Russians. And the Russians literally, it wasn't an organized retreat. Like, they were running, stealing cars, knocking down people and taking their cars. There were reports of Russians changing into civilian clothes to not be detected. And
leaving behind tanks, leaving behind ammunition.
And the Ukrainians said their biggest issue is, the Russians left behind so much shit that they need to move on to the next part of their operation, but there's so much shit that they don't want to just leave behind that they have to try to figure out, all right, how do we basically do these two things at once? There's also reports that the Russians are literally pulling people out of jail, and they're basically volunteering them to join the Russian army in the fight. And look, plenty of people have said this, and I can kind of start to agree with it. That, I mean, in theory and in concept, Vladimir Putin has already lost, right? The expectation was that Russia was going to go in and roll Ukraine and be done within a week or two. This has dragged on for 6-7 months. You had a recent terrible loss, right? With the Russians just experienced this really bad, embarrassing loss where their soldiers are having to literally run and flee in the middle of the night. You're trying to pull people and force them into serving and fighting this war that I'm sure, look, if you can get out of jail, I'm sure it's a great motivator. But, if you're going out to fight and you see all these Russian dead bodies coming back in, that is not the ideal sort of situation. But I guess it's better than sitting in jail. And you have to wonder, if you're a Russian prisoner, you're just hell yeah, I'll go and fight for you. As soon as you get across the line, jump into civilian clothes. It's just I'm headed to Poland. Get the fuck out of here.
Right.
I don't know, but it's an interesting situation. Now listen. That being said, the Russians still do have just a fuck ton more people, right, that they can continue to throw at this. Now, the question is, how effective can they be? And we did talk about this last week, that a lot of the weapons that they're using are coming from Iran and North Korea. The weapons themselves are not up to snuff. They're not as accurate. They're not as reliable. Sometimes they just don't fucking work. You've got the Russian military that has proven to be, there are multiple reports coming from, different news agencies, different, reliable sources, that the Russian fighters are not well trained. They're not disciplined. A lot of them don't know what's going on. Whether it's just orders that don't make sense or they just don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. They don't know what they're fighting for, what the goal is. And Russia looks very bad here, and the only reason they're actually still in this fight is just because of numbers. They have the numbers to continue to fight, but how long will that be the case? And also, how long are the Russian fighters going to continue to fight? Right? I mean, you just had a number of them that just said, fuck that, I'm out. Right? So how much longer are you going to be able to send them in to fight? Right, where they're willing to do what they need to do to win this thing, and I don't know what the answer is, but you have to wonder. Eventually, does one of two things happen? Do you start to see large numbers of the Russian military start to completely go AWOL and defect and just say fuck it, I'm done? And does someone higher up in Putin's inner circle decide that he's the problem?
Well, a bunch of Putin's boys have been dying under less than what looked like natural causes. There have been folks falling out of windows.
The dude that just fell off a boat. The dude that just fell out of a window. The dude that just fell off a roof. Like, first, can we come up with a different way for people? Like, so you managed to get this really, really successful group of inner circle Russian oligarchs that all are the clumsiest humans on earth. Get the fuck out of here! Like, come on.
But this is Putin. He doesn't try to. I mean,
he's not trying. I mean, he's like
but they always have nothing to do with this.
Well, I mean, like they always throw in the we think it was suicide or accident or whatever. I don't know.
We'll let you know when the paperwork comes out.
Yeah,
yes.
when the autopsy report is
that's a line from Casablanca. He either committed suicide or died trying to escape. Yeah. We haven't decided yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. It is interesting to see where, how this goes. You know, can this be a huge turning point for Ukraine? I mean, I think it is, but can they capitalize on it, keep the momentum going, and really force the Russians basically out of their country and really keep them out? And then what does this do to Russia, right? Can Putin survive it? Can he survive it and stay alive? Like, does someone kill him? Or, is he, is there just a complete Russian uprising against him and they push him out? I have no idea.
Did you think Vladimir Zelensky would still be alive today when this started? Because I didn't. I didn't. I don't think he did.
Well, no, he didn't. And listen, but what he did was he fortified himself, right? Like, he's not hiding.
No,
but I mean, he's out there, but he has made sure that he's protected, and the Ukrainian government has made sure that he's protected, because why wouldn't you think that Putin would come after you?
Right.
Right. And so, yes, I mean, I think, no, I did think that they were going to come after him, but I had no idea how that would go. And it has not gone well for the Russians at all. And, you just have to wonder, the longer this thing draws out, really at what point is it, like, there's nothing for the Russians to gain, right? Like, I mean, you can even make that argument now, like, especially because they're losing whatever ground they gained over the last 6 months, losing a large percentage of it. And a lot of people seeing the weakness of the Russian army, just how inept they are in a lot of sense, and where their morale, but where their equipment is and everything else. I mean, like, Russia really exposed themselves here in a lot of ways, and the question is, like, even if it ends up where Ukraine's just like, all right, this thing is done, like, we'll give you this particular little section over here, but you got to leave us the fuck alone, and Russia, like, how exposed is Russia? I don't think anybody else in Europe wants to go into Russia. I don't think they want to do that. No. But, like, I mean, now when Russia does their saber rattling, they're just going, like, shut the fuck up. Like, we just saw what happened to you.
Dave from Philly sent me a tweet or a text saying 50,000 Americans died in Vietnam in 10 years. 50,000 Russians have been killed in Ukraine in 6 months.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, we don't know the exact numbers.
We don't. And you have to be
skeptical. You got to be, you have to look at all that with a skeptical eye. But he's right. Look, I mean, the Russians have taken some really heavy losses that I think they definitely didn't see themselves taking. And the question is, how many more of those losses can they actually take and continue to have soldiers that are willing to go out there and continue to be the next one?
Right.
That comes back in a body bag. I mean, and you got to wonder how many Russian families are like, is this worth losing my son over?
100%. And back to the beginning of this discussion.
We got to wrap it up, B.
Yeah, we got to wrap it up. Kickoff just happened. Sorry. But Russia expected to roll through this in a week. Yeah. We expected to roll through Iraq in a week. And when you expect to do something in a week, it never happens in a week. All right, before we go, Ken Starr died this week. Ken Starr, in my opinion, was a despicable piece of shit. Oh, Jesus. Sorry, was that too offensive?
Ken Starr. I mean, but Ken Starr, I mean, he led the whole thing against Bill Clinton with the impeachment and all that stuff. And I don't have much to say other than rest in peace or whatever.
Monica, someone to play chess with or checkers with in hell. Fuck you both.
It was interesting to see Monica Lewinsky's quote, which she took the high road best she could. She just brought up that he basically made her life hell for 20 years, and she was just a kid when that happened. Like, the more I think about it, like how fucked up that whole situation is. Like, Ooh, Bill, like she was really young, and then everything that she went through and put, like, oh my God, like I just can't even imagine. But anyway, yeah. So Ken Starr is no longer with us, and I think he had gone to Baylor and was like,
yeah, he was. I think he was there during this cover-ups of
he was there doing some pretty shady shit as well. So it's just like he was a pretty, MAGA Trump supporter guy as well. So
he was actually a Trump lawyer, but my guess is he stopped being a Trump lawyer when he wasn't getting paid. But that's speculation on my part. But he was part of the first impeachment team.
Right.
Anyway, we're acknowledging that Ken Starr has passed away, and I just consider him to be a despicable human being. So
yeah,
not exactly. Well, oddly, I am tearing up, but that's because of my allergies and not anything to do with Ken Starr. All right, we are at Whiskey Congress on Instagram and Twitter. Steve needs to go home and watch the Steelers. We're done.